Yeah, I shouldn't be recording videos right now. I actually have a shit ton of work to do. Um, I was on vacation last week, and I had like every fucking thing I touched broke, and I also had to fix it. I ended up re-implementing my entire fucking home automation stack due to my cat puking on my Raspberry Pi and it becoming unbootable and the SD card becoming unbootable. Um, yeah, and I have this new computer and I'm just. But let's talk about something that I played with probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I, if you're like me, you get annoyed because you hear all this bullshit and you want to know why. Uh, and for me, there was all this talk of hydrogen economy and hydrogen cars and just, solar hydrogen storage, so on and so forth, man. And I looked for like a year to find a fucking fuel cell that I could actually afford. And I guess, you know, maybe it's because I'm a hippie. Um, but in this journey, not only were there some interesting things that happened along the way, but I I I met some people that I think are fucking cool, and some people that are in a way kind of my heroes or the type of people that I would like to be. Um, this is my kit, and I have not looked in here in years. Um, let's see what we got. There's a lot more in here than I fucking remember. The biggest thing is it looks like I have a bunch of resistors because this is what I was using to put a load on the cell. Um, I mean, look, here's a weird little, it must be like a purge valve. Psst, psst. Um, I believe this is a filter to filter. It's for filtering. Uh, and then shit tons of cable, which I don't know if this will reach. I actually still have a tank full of hydrogen, and it's been it's been sitting in my house, which is a really bad idea. Um, there's a regulator in here. Um, anyway, if that thing can reach, or if I feel like ripping that thing out, or if somebody wants to actually see this thing work, it is quite interesting. Um, and it does playing with your own fuel cell, at least for me, uh, cleared up a lot of things. Um, so this is a this this is all off the top of my head, okay, from many years ago. But this is a PEM fuel cell, which I can't even fucking remember what PEM stands for. But basically, what that means is it combines hydrogen and oxygen into water through a membrane and produces power. And I I looked for a fucking fuel cell because I didn't want like something you could just experiment with. I wanted something that did actual work. Um, what I mean by that is I wanted to be able to use hydrogen or produce hydrogen because that's the other interesting thing. You can run this backwards. You can feed power to it. And you can actually rip hydrogen. Well, let me back up here. Let's not run the fuel cell backwards, because I've already you can ruin it. You can ruin it running forwards. So let's back up, because yeah, it's easier just to make hydrogen with electrolysis. Um, but the point is, if you make hydrogen, it potentially is a good storage medium. You know, you're not, and hydrogen, as it turns out, is one of the most escapey things. Period. It wants to escape from everything. It's the smallest thing. It doesn't like to be next to itself, so you can't compress it well. It's really fucking difficult to store. Uh, yeah, and also if you go to your local gas people, the people that distribute gas, and ask for hydrogen, they give you funny looks. And in my case, they were like, "Yeah, we've never had anybody ask us for that. What do you want that for?" And I'm kind of like, "Well, because I want it." Um, but anyway, so if memory serves, I think I was gonna have to come up with like 3 grand to run a fuel cell, to be able to own a fuel cell and run it, and be able to do any meaningful amount of work with it. Kind of my minimum requirement was, at the very least, I wanted to be able to bootstrap charging batteries. Charging like a 12-volt lead acid battery, uh, which in reality, if you take a given 12-volt battery, you need to be able to push about 14 volts, and you need to be able to push a couple amps. So right there, man, that's, you need to have around 20 to 30 watts. After scouring and scouring the fucking internet, I finally met Charles Tanzola. I was bugging the shit out of him, but he's a great guy, and this is a long time ago. But oh, where'd it go? Yeah, man. So he owns TDM. They appear to be still going, and my video is doing weird, crazy shit. Um, and after talking to him, like his prices, I think I paid around $700 uh for this fuel cell. And I don't know what prices are like now. I'm going into this cold. I haven't fucked with any of this in a long time. Um but like I said, at the time, I think it was going to cost me like 3 grand. Maybe that was for something that could push like a kilowatt. I don't remember, man. But Charles turned out to be one of the coolest people I've met. What he basically told me is he was looking for fuel cells, and everywhere he went, they were just overpriced. Like, in terms of the material cost, it's like, I don't know if it's because, like, back then there was a lot of hype and people could just get away with that shit, or the demand was weird. Like, I don't really know, but he obviously felt the same way, and he owned a machine shop, and he was like, "Fuck it, I can make it for less." Um, and so that's what he did, man. So I found a fuel cell that I could spec to have enough cells to do real work, and this actually can do somewhere between 20 and 30 watts, if I remember. Um, which means you put hydrogen in and you get water out, and this thing will breathe and it will put off electricity. And you basically just throw a diode on there, and bam, you've got, somewhere 14 to 15 volts, and you can push a couple amps. So I was running this thing, and and daydreaming about solar and producing my own hydrogen and whatever, being off grid, being a hippie, I guess. And holy shit, the things I discovered. First of all, this is just the fuel cell. To successfully run a fuel cell, and you can watch other videos. Like I think one of the funniest ones I saw uh, was Mike's electric stuff. he reviewed a product that I'll put it in the link below. But he reviewed this product, and it's like he was like pissed, and I totally get it because it was such a fucking stupid idea, and it was obviously left over from this time where there was all this hype, and somebody basically produced this useless little fuel cell that you could buy hydrogen and produce power, and you're just like you're gonna spend so much fucking money on that entire economy, and it's like a fuel cell. The only thing that a fuel cell is really good at doing, like what I learned is they are good at producing sort of a constant amount of power. Like fuel cells aren't going to be great for cars because you can't just demand tons and tons of power out of them. It's kind of like the car problem we have now. We oversize our motors to reach high acceleration because we need that power on demand. When however, when a car is running like steady state down the highway at 60 miles an hour, it can be like super efficient if it's in its most efficient, anyway, internal combustion engines, yeah, essentially they're not efficient throughout their power, their power delivery curve, yeah, if that makes sense. Neither are these things. Like if you needed to produce Tesla like power from a fuel cell, it's gonna be fucking huge, and you're gonna be hauling that thing around. These are plates of uh these are plates of carbon. This is essentially like pencil lead. This is exactly what this is. Um, that's why you can see it rubbing off on my finger like that. Sandwiched in between it are the membranes, and the lead. These carbon plates are just routed out in such a way that the gas it gets routed and pushed through the membranes. Um, but this is not going to run a car. Like you're still going to need batteries because batteries are what actually deliver the power. So all a fuel cell might be good at doing is capping off or topping off the batteries. And really in a vehicle, if you want something that can constantly, if you need 20 kilowatts, let's say, to run at steady state at 60 miles an hour, then it makes more sense to me to have an internal combustion engine that is able to produce 20 kilowatts and charge a battery bank or maybe some capacitors to run an electric motor that can put out the many, like maybe you need 70 kilowatts to get fun acceleration. But my point is, I wouldn't choose a fuel cell then either. Because for one, this shit's expensive. For two, nobody can service it. It takes a fair amount of components to make it run properly. And even then, implementation of said products can be pretty piss poor, such as like when Mike's electric stuff reviewed that solar or fuel cell, that PEM stack. It was not good. Um, And then the storage of hydrogen. It's storage of hydrogen is not free. It is, in fact, it's fucking hard. The the best storage that I know of is uh, sort of a low pressure system with a, what do they call it? A metal hydride. Metal hydride. Um, it's basically a metal that when you put a bunch of hydrogen in it, like metal in like powder form, let's say, and it will want to soak up that hydrogen. And really all it's doing is making the hydrogen fit in between the little metal pieces and therefore want to be able to fit together, because otherwise hydrogen just doesn't want to be next to hydrogen. It's they've I guess it's what they have a they repel each other. I don't know charges of things, but I don't think, yeah, hydrogen doesn't like to be. It has extra electrons. That's why we use it for everything. Your lithium ion is full of hydrogen. Your gasoline is full of hydrogen. It's hydrocarbons. It's that additional electron in the hydrogen atom that we use for so many power things. So what was my fucking point? My fucking point was I bought one of these things a long time ago. I spent my own money. I ran the fuel cell. I learned a lot, and I realized that we were never going to have a hydrogen economy. It doesn't make any goddamn sense whatsoever when you can store way more hydrogen in gasoline, or even in, it's probably more dense now in batteries. Um, Hydrogen is escapey. Uh, Meh. But anyway, back to the actual fuel cell here. So this little dude, um, I'll describe how it runs, and then if somebody really wants to see it run, I'll hook it up and run it, because it is quite interesting. But essentially, I think I was limited to 3 psi. If you went higher than 3 psi, you risked blowing the membranes. And what actually happens is this sandwich of of each cell. It's a cell and a membrane and a cell and a membrane, and the hydrogen is going through. It's able to interact with the oxygen that is just in the environment. And so essentially, like, if you blow air through this area, you end up producing more power because you get more interaction. So, like, essentially the art is you get the thing started up. You may or may not put, like, I had a little, back then I guess it was a Pentium 2 or Pentium 3 fan that just fit perfectly on here, and would blow that on there, and then basically I think I got 22 watts out of this thing, and I charged batteries, and I did all kinds of experiments, and it was really, really cool. And I back then also daydreamed of, I mean, again, you don't want to be running a vehicle off of hydrogen unless you're burning it, maybe. But storage is what prevents that from being convenient. Not only are you gonna need an internal combustion like engine if you're gonna burn it, or you're gonna need a huge fuel cell which is full of expensive materials. I think to this day there's still, like, it takes a lot of platinum and other shit to go into a fuel cell. So they are expensive for a reason. Um, but yeah, the size requirements. But the metal hydride, which was the best storage medium, well, that's metal. So, so imagine your gasoline tank being full of metal powder, which, by the way, explodes if it if it sees air. It doesn't like it's overall a safe system because it's a low pressure system, but it has to be sized right that you can pull enough hydrogen out of it at a given rate to get the energy that you need. Uh, and same thing, it can only absorb at a given rate. It's a lot like a battery. Like when you talk about storing hydrogen in something like metal hydride, um, the size of the vessel and everything have to do with how quickly you can absorb hydrogen and how quickly you can off gas hydrogen. And there's other weird shit too, like the vessel. I think it does it do the opposite of like what normal shit does. Like no, I think it just gets real hot when you're putting hydrogen in, and it gets real cold when you're pulling it out. Maybe vice versa, but probably cold when you're pulling it out because that's like normal expansion of a gas. Um, but that also ends up slowing down the rate at which the hydrogen off gases from the nooks and cranny of the metal. So you have to have a large enough container to meet whatever demand of power generation that you want to do. Um, Other than that, there was weird shit like people were cooking chicken feathers. In fact, I bought chickens because of my hydrogen economy shit. Because I read you could cook chicken feathers at like 500 degrees, and you cook them until they were just all carbon. Like not flame cook them, but like heat them until you ended up with this fluffy carbon material. And that allegedly was a good potential storage medium for hydrogen. Uh, and potentially way better than metal hydride. I've yet to see that come to market, and in fact, I couldn't source any of that shit, and so I got chickens, and my plan was to make some of that material and experiment with it. Um, so I don't know. There's a lot of fun stuff around fuel cells, and I kind of have been itching to start messing with them again now that nobody talks about fuel cells anymore. Uh, I like that because it means real, you can actually research without so much hype and shit. Um, but I haven't seen any breakthroughs on storage. But I do. There were things like, potentially, like there were dirty things like you can do electrolysis, and with electrolysis, hydrogen and oxygen both will come off at pressure. So you can go straight into either a pressurized system or a somewhat pressurized system with electrolysis right into your storage system. Um, and if you did something crazy like had a radiator full of metal hydride, uh, literally like a car radiator, you could just bury that car radiator in the ground, um, and have your hydrogen production coming off of your electrolysis going into that system, and you could actually store a fair amount of hydrogen that way, or possibly scale that out. And it's just in the ground. It's not in a place where you're not going to have a whole lot of concerns. But anyway, I never did all that shit. Once I learned basically what was going on in the industry, I pretty much packed this thing up, and it's been sitting. It's been sitting ever since. And then somewhere over there, in the corner of the room, is a hydrogen tank that's been strapped up to the wall. and just sitting there for years, which I actually need to move out to my shop so I can put it in a safer place. So sometime between then and now, yeah, my plan has been to play with this thing again and get it producing power, and then maybe actually this time automate some of the management of it. And also, I think I want to say I think I blew one of these cells, so I kind of needed to get in touch with Charles and maybe get a replacement or maybe rebuild this stack, because I think I just did some boneheaded thing. Meh. But yeah. Anyway, if somebody that actually does watch this video wants to see one of these run, and see kind of how it feels to run a solar, or I mean a PEM cell, it is quite interesting. It was a lot different feeling than I thought it would be getting into it, and it's fun to have just a completely naked system that can do real work, because you have to essentially develop the rest of it. You have to develop. I mean, you need to purge it, you need to manage the rate and the pressure, and much like sort of an internal combustion engine, you're going to have a maximum power point of what this thing can deliver in terms of watts. The voltage goes up. I can't remember if amps were kind of constant, and so essentially you want to run it as high as you can, kind of like solar panels. The amps are constant, so you need to run the volts as high as you can, to get essentially the maximum power. You don't want to get 2 amps at 2 volts by by dragging it down to 2 volts. You want 2 amps at 70 volts or whatever the hell panels run at. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd share. It's inconvenient for me to drag out all this shit right now, but since I had a minute to make a tubes, I wanted to I guess first say that's what the hydrogen economy is goofy. Charles Tanzola of TDM is an upstanding citizen, and I wish we had more people like him, because it's rare that you see somebody look at a market and just say that's wrong and then go try to do something about it. And he's just a cool dude, and we talked whatever 5 or 10 years ago. It's probably been 10 years, but I really enjoyed the few conversations I had with this person, and I really enjoyed the product that he produced. So I think you can actually buy his fuel cells through other outlets, but yeah, if it's something that interests you, this, at least last time I checked, would be my recommendation, and I don't see any reason for that to change. But if anybody knows of other products that are out there or wants to talk about this sort of crap, I think it's fun. It's fun stuff. And like I said, if you want me to actually, well, I probably will hook this thing up and run it. It's just that nobody watches my videos, so I don't, I'm not really hard pressed to share, but this is something that I thought most people just might not have access to. So, seems like a fun thing to just say, hey, hydrogen's bullshit, and here's why. All right, that's it. Another pointless video and my review of the TDM Flex Stack fuel cell, and the awesome people that created it.